The year is 1985. The place is a John Deere dealership in central Illinois. Fluorescent lights hum over polished green metal. Frank Miller, the manager, runs a finger down a purchase order. It's the biggest single order he's ever seen. 4 brand new 8820 Titan II combines, 4 8-row corn heads, 4 20-foot grain platforms. The total makes his hand tremble slightly. He reads the name at the bottom of the form, Miller Farms, LLC. Leo Miller, proprietor. Frank stops. He looks up from the paper. Across the showroom floor, an older man stands talking to a salesman. The man is in his late 50s. Weathered face, clear eyes. His left sleeve is pinned neatly at the elbow. Frank feels something he can't quite name. A memory surfaces. He was a boy, sweeping floors in this very dealership. His father, Arthur Miller, was the manager then. And a young man, a boy really, had stood in this same spot. A boy with one arm, asking for a chance. Frank remembers his father's kind, firm voice, the voice of a man trying to protect a boy from himself. This dealership sells stories of American success, stories of grit and soil and horsepower. But this is a different kind of story. This is the story of a man who was told he couldn't, and the decades he spent quietly proving that the most dangerous word in the world isn't no, it's can't, especially when it's said with kindness. This channel is built on stories like that, the ones that don't make the headlines, the ones that unfold over a lifetime of quiet work. If you believe these are the stories that matter most, the ones we need to hear right now, then subscribe to this channel. Join us. Because what happened to Leo Miller in this dealership, and what he did about it, it will change the way you think about the word impossible. Let's go back. March of 1946. The war was over. The world was trying to heal. So was Leo Miller. He was 17 years old, but he felt much older. The year before, a corn picker accident, a moment of tangled metal and blinding pain. It took his left arm just below the elbow. The doctors said he was lucky to be alive. Leo didn't feel lucky. He felt broken. He stood in the yard of his family's farm, 200 acres of good black dirt. His father, John, worked it with 2 mules and a pre-war farmall. It was enough to get by. It was never enough to get ahead. John was a good man, a quiet man. He saw the look in his son's eyes, not just sadness, something harder, a cold anger at the world, an anger at his own body for failing him. The neighbors were kind. They brought casseroles. They offered prayers. They said things like, "The Lord works in mysterious ways," and "Maybe you can find work in town now, son." They saw a crippled boy. They saw a future behind a desk, a life away from the dirt. Have you ever been looked at with pity? Pity from good people, people who mean well. It burns hotter than hatred, because you can't fight it. You can only endure it. Leo endured it. He learned to do his chores with one hand. He learned to tie his boots. He learned to pitch hay. He learned to drive the old farmall, wrestling the wheel with his right arm, his body braced against the seat. It was clumsy. It was exhausting. But he did it. His father watched. He never offered help unless asked. He just watched. He knew the boy had to find his own way back. The farm was struggling. The mules were old. The tractor was unreliable. Debt was a constant shadow in the kitchen. Leo saw the lines on his father's face. He heard his mother's quiet worries at night. He knew what he had to do. He was 18 now. 1947. He had saved every dollar he could, from trapping muskrats in the winter, from selling vegetables from his mother's garden. He had $500. It was a fortune to him. It was enough for a down payment. a down payment on a real tractor, a new John Deere Model A, with electric start, with power, with a future. He walked the 4 miles into town. He didn't want his father to drive him. This was something he had to do alone. He walked into the Henderson John Deere dealership. The smell of new paint and grease, it smelled like hope. Arthur Henderson was behind the counter, a pillar of the community, deacon at the First Baptist Church, coached the Little League team. A good man, everyone said so. Arthur knew the Miller family, knew about the accident. He smiled warmly at Leo. "What can I do for you, son?" Leo's heart was pounding. He put his savings book on the counter. "I'd like to buy a Model A." He said it plainly, a statement of fact. Arthur Henderson picked up the savings book. He looked at the numbers. He looked at Leo. He saw the boy's eager face. He saw the pinned-up sleeve, and his smile tightened just a little. "A Model A is a fine machine, Leo. A lot of tractor." Leo nodded. "Yes, sir. That's what we need." Arthur leaned on the counter. He lowered his voice like he was sharing a secret. "Son, I've been selling these tractors for 20 years. I know what they can do. And I know what it takes to handle one. Plowing a tough field, you need 2 good hands on that wheel, especially with the hand clutch. It's a safety issue. I couldn't live with myself if something happened to you." Leo felt the hope in his chest turn to ice. "I can handle it. I drive our old farmall now." Arthur shook his head slowly, kindly. "That's different, Leo. An old H is one thing. This is a different class of machine. I'm not going to be the man who sells you a tractor you can't safely operate. It's for your own good. For your own good." The 4 kindest, most damning words in the English language. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't malice. It was certainty. Arthur Henderson was absolutely certain he knew Leo's limits better than Leo did. He was protecting him. Leo stood there. The silence in the showroom was deafening. He could feel the eyes of the other men in the shop on him. He saw the pity again. "But I have the money for a down payment," he said it weakly. Arthur pushed the savings book back across the counter. "I'm sure you do, son. You're a hard worker. Everyone knows that. But this isn't about money. It's about what's right, what's safe. Maybe we can look at some smaller equipment, a walk-behind tiller perhaps?" A tiller. Leo looked at his right hand, calloused and strong. He looked at the empty space where his left arm should be. He turned and walked out of the dealership. He didn't say another word. The walk home was longer than the walk into town. Each step was heavy. He felt a shame so deep it was hard to breathe. He hadn't just been refused a tractor. He had been refused a future. He had been told by a good man that his life as a farmer was over. He got back to the farm. His father was in the barn, mending a harness. John looked up. He saw his son's face. He didn't have to ask what happened. He just put down the harness. Leo stood in the doorway. "He won't sell me one." His voice was flat, empty. "He says I can't handle it. He says it's for my own good." John Miller wiped his hands on a rag. He walked over to his son. He put a hand on Leo's shoulder. He looked out at the 200 acres. The sun was setting. The black dirt looked rich and endless. "They took your arm, son." He said it quietly. "They can't take the dirt. The dirt is enough." Leo looked at his father. He saw no pity in his eyes, only belief, absolute, unshakable belief. "Let's go find you a tractor." They didn't go back to the John Deere dealership. They went to the scrap yards. They went to farm auctions. They looked at the rusted machines sitting at the back of forgotten fields. 2 weeks later, they found it. A 1938 John Deere Model B. It hadn't run in a decade. The tires were rotten. The engine was seized. The farmer wanted $50 for it. To him, it was junk. To Leo and his father, it was a chance. They hauled it home. They put it in the barn. And they began the real work. This is where the story turns. This is where a boy's anger and a father's faith are forged into steel. They tore the engine down, piece by piece, on the barn's dirt floor. They soaked the pistons in kerosene for a week. They honed the cylinders by hand. They ordered new gaskets from a catalog. His father taught him everything: how to read the wear on a bearing, how to set the timing, how to feel the right tension on a bolt. Leo learned with one hand. He developed a strength in his fingers that was astounding. He learned to hold a wrench with his knees, to use his feet to stabilize a part. He worked from sunup to sundown. His knuckles were always bloody. His clothes were always stained with grease. But the cold anger inside him was melting. It was being replaced by something else: focus, purpose. After a month, the engine was rebuilt. They put it back in the frame. They filled it with oil and gas. Leo climbed onto the seat. His father stood by the flywheel. "Ready, son?" Leo nodded. John spun the flywheel. Once. Twice. On the third pull, the engine coughed. It sputtered black smoke. Then, it roared to life. Pop, 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 pop. The sound of a two-cylinder John Deere. The sound of resurrection. Leo grinned. The first real smile in over a year. But the work wasn't done. Now, they had to solve the problem of control. Arthur Henderson was right about one thing. A hand-clutch tractor was difficult to steer and operate with one arm. So, Leo decided to change the tractor. He would not change his ambition. He spent a week just sitting on the seat, thinking, visualizing. He took a piece of chalk and drew diagrams on the barn floor. His father watched, offering suggestions. What if we move the clutch? What if we link the brakes? They went to the town blacksmith, a man named Gus who had a forge and an anvil. Leo explained what he needed. Gus listened. He looked at the boy's chalk drawings. He looked at his missing arm. He nodded. Let's get to work. For the next month, the barn became an invention workshop. They took the hand clutch lever and moved it. They welded a new linkage. They ran a steel rod down to the floor. They fabricated a new pedal next to the brake. Now, Leo could engage the clutch with his right foot. His one good hand was free to steer. It was a crude setup, but it worked. Next, the steering. Turning the wheel while operating the throttle and watching the implements was too much, so they built a steering lock. A simple, brilliant device. Leo took the steering wheel from an old Ford truck. It had a smaller diameter, easier to turn quickly. He mounted it. Then, Gus helped him forge a notched steel plate. They bolted it to the steering column. They attached a spring-loaded pin with a handle near the driver's seat. When Leo got the tractor lined up in a long, straight furrow, he could pull the handle. The pin would lock into a notch on the plate. The tractor would hold its course. He could take his hand off the wheel for a few seconds, long enough to adjust the throttle, long enough to check the plow. It gave him a moment to breathe, a moment of control. One arm. He now had one arm, one foot, and a steel pin, and it was enough. The dirt is enough. His father's words echoed in his mind. That spring of 1948, Leo drove his creation out of the barn. It was ugly. A patchwork of welded steel and mismatched parts. The neighbors stopped and stared. Some of them laughed. What in the world is that contraption? Old Man Miller's boy has lost his mind. He'll kill himself on that thing. Arthur Henderson drove by one day. He slowed his truck. He saw the boy on the strange-looking tractor. He shook his head, a sad, knowing shake. He was a good man, trying to protect a boy from his own foolish pride. He was certain it would end in failure. Certainty is a prison. Leo didn't hear the laughter. He didn't see the pity. He only heard the pop-pop of the engine. He only felt the vibration of the steel under him. He plowed his father's 200 acres. He did it faster and better than his father ever could with the old farmall. The furrows were straighter. The soil was turned deeper. That year, they had the best corn crop of their lives. They paid off their debts. They had money in the bank for the first time. Cash. Leo kept working. He kept improving his machine. He added a foot throttle, linked to the hand throttle. He built a custom hitch that he could operate from the seat. He was not just a farmer. He was an engineer, an inventor. His body had a limitation, so he redesigned the world to fit his body. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't ask for help. He just worked. Let me tell you about the next few years, because this is where the story becomes bigger than one boy and one tractor. By 1950, Leo had saved enough money. He saw a for sale sign on 80 acres bordering their farm. The land was worn out. The owner thought it was useless. Leo bought it. Cash. He spent that winter hauling manure from the dairy down the road. He enriched the soil. He planted clover to fix the nitrogen. He rested the land. He listened to it. The neighbors thought he was crazy, wasting good money on bad land. 2 years later, that useless 80 acres produced 120 bushel per acre corn. The county average was 90. People stopped laughing. They started watching. 1955. Leo was 26 years old. He married a girl from town named Sarah. She saw the man, not the missing arm. She saw his strength, his quiet determination. They bought another 120 acres. Cash. Leo bought another junk tractor, a John Deere Model G, bigger, more powerful. He and his father spent the winter in the barn. They rebuilt it. They fabricated a new, more advanced one-handed control system. They were a team. John Miller had never been prouder. He saw his son not just surviving, but thriving, proving everyone wrong. 1960. The Miller farm was now 400 acres, all paid for, no debt. Leo and Sarah had a son. They named him John. Little John grew up in the barn. He learned to hand his father wrenches. He learned the smell of grease and steel. He saw his father as a giant, a man who could fix anything. A man with one arm who was stronger than any two-armed man he knew. Arthur Henderson still ran the John Deere dealership. He saw Leo in town sometimes. Leo would nod politely. Arthur would nod back. But there was a distance, a silence. The silence of a man who had been proven wrong, but would never admit it. He saw the Miller trucks go by, loaded with grain. He heard the yields at the co-op. He knew. But certainty is a hard thing to let go of. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something by someone who thought they were protecting you? Someone you respected. Someone whose opinion mattered. How long did it take you to prove them wrong? A week? A year? A decade? Drop a comment below and tell us about it. Because Leo's story was just getting started. What happened next changed everything. The 1960s rolled on. Leo kept buying land. He bought the pieces nobody wanted, the hilly ground, the swampy bottoms. He learned about drainage tile. He learned about contour plowing. He healed the land. He made it productive. By 1965, he was farming 600 acres, all cash. His father, John, passed away that year, peacefully, in his sleep. At the funeral, the whole town came. They talked about what a good, quiet man John was. Leo stood by the grave. He remembered his father's words, "The dirt is enough." He went back to work. It was the only way he knew how to grieve. He bought his first diesel tractor that year, a used John Deere 4010. It was a monster compared to his old 2 cylinders. He spent the winter in the barn, alone this time. He designed a whole new control system. He used hydraulics. He designed a joystick that he could operate with his right hand. It controlled the steering, the throttle, and the implements. It was years ahead of its time. He never filed for a patent. He didn't care about fame. He just wanted to work his land. By 1970, Miller Farms was 1,000 acres. Leo hired his first full-time employee, a young man from town who couldn't find work. Leo taught him everything. He didn't just give him a job, he gave him a trade. He gave him dignity. That year, Arthur Henderson retired. He sold the dealership to a larger company. A young man named Frank Miller became the new manager. No relation to Leo. Frank had grown up in the town. He remembered the stories about the one-armed farmer and his homemade tractors. He saw Leo as a local legend, a curiosity. He didn't understand the depth of the story. He didn't know about the refusal. He just knew the Millers didn't buy new equipment. They always bought used. They always paid cash. The 1970s brought the farm crisis. High interest rates, low commodity prices. Farmers who were leveraged with debt went under. Foreclosure auctions were a weekly event. It was a heartbreaking time. Neighbors losing farms that had been in their families for 100 years. Leo survived. He had no debt. He had always saved his money. He had always lived simply. When his neighbors were in trouble, he helped. He'd show up with his equipment at harvest time. He never asked for payment. He'd lend money for seed with no interest. He started buying land again, not out of greed, but out of a sense of duty. He bought his neighbors' farms at fair prices. He often gave them the option to buy it back later. Few ever did. He promised them he would care for the land. He would be a good steward. By 1980, Miller Farms was 1,500 acres. Leo's son John was in college, studying agronomy. He came home every weekend to help on the farm. He was proud of what his father had built. He understood the sacrifice. He understood the silence. His father never spoke of the day at the dealership, but the story was there. It was in the modified tractors. It was in the fierce independence. It was in the quiet refusal to ever owe any man anything. 1982. Leo buys another 500 acres, cash. He now owns 2,000 acres of the best farmland in the state. The boy who was told he couldn't handle one tractor now runs an empire. He has a fleet of used, heavily modified John Deere machines. He is one of the most respected farmers in the Midwest, known for his high yields, known for his innovative soil conservation, known for his integrity. He is a quiet man. He doesn't give speeches. He doesn't seek recognition. He just works the dirt. Which brings us back to 1985, back to the John Deere dealership. Frank Miller stands there, holding the purchase order. 4 new combines, the biggest, most advanced machines John Deere makes. And Leo Miller is paying cash, the full amount, over $1 million. Frank walks over to Leo. He feels nervous, like he's meeting a king. "Leo, this is quite an order." Leo looks at him. His eyes are calm. "We've had a few good years. It's time to upgrade. My son John, he's taking over more of the operation. He wants the new technology." Frank swallows hard. He has to ask. "Mr. Miller." "Leo, I've been managing this place for 15 years. We've tried to earn your business, but you've never bought a new piece of equipment from us, not once. Why now?" Leo looks around the showroom. He sees the new tractors, gleaming under the lights. He looks at the spot where he stood as a boy, almost 40 years ago. He looks at Frank, and he tells him the story. He tells him about the Model A, about the down payment, about Arthur Henderson. He tells it simply, factually, with no anger in his voice, no bitterness, just the quiet recitation of a memory. As he speaks, the showroom goes silent. The salesmen stop talking. The mechanics in the back pause their work. They all listen. When Leo finishes, there is a long silence. Frank Miller feels a shame so profound it's like a physical weight. He thinks of his own father, who took over from Henderson. He thinks of the years they dismissed Leo as just a thrifty farmer. They never understood. It wasn't about money. It was about dignity. Proving someone wrong who thinks they're being kind is the loneliest fight there is. Leo speaks the words quietly, but they land with the force of a thunderclap. Frank looks at this one-armed farmer, this legend, and he finally understands. All those years, all that work, all that innovation in the barn, it wasn't just about building a farm. It was about building a world where he would never have to ask for permission again. A world where he was self-sufficient. A world where his own two hands, or his one hand, was enough. Frank feels tears welling in his eyes. He clears his throat. "Leo, on behalf of this dealership, my father, Mr. Henderson, I am so sorry. We were wrong." Leo Miller looks at the man. He offers a small, sad smile. "He was a good man, Frank, your predecessor. He thought he was doing the right thing. His certainty was the problem, not his heart." Then Leo puts his hand on one of the new combines. He feels the cold, green steel. Let's talk about delivery. The story doesn't end there, because a legacy is not what you build for yourself. It's what you leave for others. Leo Miller farmed for another 10 years. He and his son John worked side by side. They continued to grow the farm. But their focus shifted. In 1990, Leo and Sarah established the Miller Foundation. Its first act was to create a scholarship, a full ride to the State Agricultural University, for any young person with a physical disability who wanted to study agriculture or engineering. It was called the Dirt is Enough Scholarship. Over the next 30 years, it would send over 100 young men and women to college. Kids who had been told they couldn't. Kids who were looked at with pity. Leo mentored many of them personally. He'd bring them to the farm. He'd show them his workshop. He'd show them the modified tractors. He never gave them speeches. He just showed them what was possible. He showed them how to redesign the world to fit their bodies. He passed away in 2005, at the age of 76. The whole state mourned. His funeral was held in the high school gymnasium. It was the only place big enough. People came from all over the country. Farmers he had helped. Scholarship kids who were now successful engineers and agronomists. The children of the neighbors who had once laughed at him. They all came to honor the quiet man who had changed their world. Today, Miller Farms is over 5,000 acres. John and his children run it. They use the most advanced technology in the world. GPS-guided tractors, drone surveillance. But in the main office, on the wall, there is a framed photograph. It's a picture of that first, ugly John Deere Model B. The one they pulled from a scrap heap, and next to it, mounted on a polished oak board, is the original steering lock. The notched steel plate and the spring-loaded pin. Forged by a blacksmith named Gus. Designed by a boy with one arm and a fire in his belly. It's a physical artifact, a reminder, a testament, that limitations are often just a failure of imagination. Last year, the local agricultural museum opened a new exhibit. It's called Innovations from the Dirt. The centerpiece of the exhibit is a tractor, a 1938 John Deere Model B, restored to the exact condition it was in when Leo first drove it out of the barn, with its foot clutch, with its homemade steering lock. School children walk by it every day. They see the strange levers and pedals. Their teachers tell them the story of the boy who built it, the boy who was told no. One day, a man came to the museum, an old man in a wheelchair. It was Frank Miller, the former dealership manager. He sat in front of that tractor for a long time. He just looked at it. His grandson was with him. He asked, "Grandpa, what's so special about that tractor?" Frank didn't answer for a moment. He just reached out a trembling hand and touched the worn steel of the foot pedal. He closed his eyes. "That tractor, son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That tractor is proof." "Proof of what?" his grandson asked. Frank opened his eyes. They were clear. "Proof that the most powerful thing on this earth isn't a machine. It's a human being who has been told they can't do something. Right now, somewhere in the world, a young person is being told no. They're being told they aren't smart enough, strong enough, good enough. They are being told this by people who might even love them, people who are trying to protect them, people who are certain about their limits. Leo Miller's story is a quiet answer to that certainty. It's a 60-year-long rebuttal written in steel and soil. It reminds us that the kindness of the certain can be more damaging than the cruelty of the hostile. Because it can't be fought with anger. It can only be disproven, with decades of work, with quiet determination, with a relentless belief in your own capacity, a belief that even when parts of you are broken or taken away, the dirt is enough. If this story means something to you, if you know someone who needs to hear that their limitations are not their destiny, then share this video. Help us tell the stories that matter, the stories of the quiet giants who prove the world wrong, 1 acre at a time. Subscribe for more, and never let anyone else tell you what you are capable of.